Welcome to Modern Anarchy, the podcast exploring sex, relationships, and liberation. I'm your host, Dr. Nicole.
I tried to keep her quiet, but she's screaming inside of me. I tried to keep her hiding, oh, shut up. I tried to keep her quiet, but she's a wild, wild woman.
On today's episode, we have Jane. Join us for a conversation all about liberating our communities and stepping into empowered pleasure. Together we talk about the bravery to be curious, integrating the wisdom of a dominatrix, and doing the Lord's work of pleasure liberation. Hello, dear listener, and welcome back to Modern Anarchy. I am so delighted to have all of you pleasure activists from around the world tuning in for another episode each Wednesday. My name is Dr. Nicole. I'm a sex and relationship psychotherapist providing psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy, author of the Psychedelic Jealousy Guide, and founder of the Pleasure Practice, where I support individuals in crafting pleasurable sex lives and non-monogamous relationships. Dear listener, your empowered, pleasure-based sexuality narrative. Y'all know every single time I have a guest on the show, one of the main questions I ask is, what was your sex ed like, if at all? If you got anything, maybe they had abstinence-only education too, but many guests have talked about their sex education journey, and rarely ever is there a pleasure-based narrative. My God. I'm so grateful to be doing the work that I'm doing in my sexuality program and my 16-week programs, because that's all of what it's focused on, quite literally, pleasure liberation. And you can feel the energy in the groups and the things that we're talking about in terms of expanding your narratives. I'm really big on narrative therapy and love the frameworks that brings to our psychological experience. And the reality is that because we're so restricted in this world around sex positivity and pleasure-based narratives, we have to get creative, folks. We have to dream and get creative and see worlds of possibility in our own lives, in our communities, around pleasure-based sexuality that have not been given to us in the culture that surrounds us. And so I really want to invite you this week, as you listen to this episode and as you move this week, to think about what are the narratives of sex that you have been sold, and how could you step into an even more pleasure-filled frame to your exploration? All right, dear listener, if you are ready to liberate your pleasure, you can explore my offerings and free resources at modernanarchypodcast.com. And I want to say the biggest thank you to all of my Patreon members, with a big hello to our newest Patreon member, Tucker. Hello. It's such a joy to have you in the Patreon space. It's such an intimate, private space where I share so much more of my personal life. And it is a joy to have you in that space and to be growing and learning together. And thank you for supporting this show. We don't run any ads anymore. And so it's all Patreon funded. And so thank you, Tucker. Thank you so much. If you want to check out the Patreon community, learn more about how to support the show, and get access to some of my personal posts in that space, the Patreon link is down below. And this is also the last call to join the Queering Psychedelics Zoom workshop that I'm having this weekend on the 11th. So we're meeting at 10:30 a.m. Central Time. The link is in the show notes below. I have my full psychedelic team. We're going to be talking all about what it means to bring the frameworks of psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy into your psychedelic practice, and also what it means to do that from a particularly queer lens. This is an all-queer staff of providers, and I am so excited. So many of you have already signed up, so many of you, and I'm so excited to see you there. Fat Cat is so excited to see you there as well, and of course, all the links to that and so much more are in the show notes below. And with that, dear listener, please know that I am sending you all my love, and let's tune in to today's episode. Dear listener, there's a space already waiting for you where you are invited to let go of every old script about sex and relationships and begin living a life rooted in your pleasure, empowerment, and deep alignment. I'm Dr. Nicole, and this is your invitation to the Pleasure Liberation Groups, a transformative, educational, and deeply immersive experience designed for visionary individuals like you. Together, we'll gather in community to explore desire, expand relational wisdom, and embody the lives we're here to lead. Each session is woven with practices, teachings, and the kind of connection that makes real transformation possible. And I'll be right there with you, guiding the process with an embodied curriculum that supports both personal and collective liberation. This is your invitation into the next chapter of your erotic evolution. Say yes to your pleasure and visit modernanarchypodcast.com/pleasure practice to apply. So the first question I like to ask each guest is, how would you introduce yourself to the listeners?
I would say hi. My name is Jane Downey. I am a 24-year-old woman from Cleveland, Ohio, and I currently work as a sex and relationship therapist in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Well, welcome to the show, Jane. It's so exciting to have you here today. Hello.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Of course, of course. Well, I think a good place to start would be, I would love for you to share more about your story into pleasure liberation. How did you become passionate about this work? Where does that journey start for you?
Yeah, so I would say it's funny listening to your show and then being so excited to I'm trying hard not to fangirl.
Oh,
Like I am.
fangirl, let's do it. Come on, I'll
I'm
fangirl back.
yeah, I know, whatever. But yeah, so it's funny because a lot of the themes in the episode I listened to, you are very comfortable, and your guests are too, talking about Catholic shame, Catholic guilt, the seeds of that. So I come from that background a little bit too, more so with how that shaped my perspective growing up, where I was in the Catholic after school, but a public school student.
Okay.
During the day.
Dual worlds, Hannah Montana. You've got the
Exactly.
in one wig.
Exactly. So it was Paris School of Religion is what it's called, PSR.
Okay.
And it was instead of Sunday school, because you would go to mass on Sunday and then you would do Monday evening, Sunday school, basically. And that you would meet all of your same milestones and everything.
Sure.
As we move on from that, my public school, I had 3 different sex education experiences, all of which left a lot to be desired.
Okay, tell me about them. I'm so curious.
Yeah, because the suburb where I grew up is very Irish Catholic, suburb of Cleveland. So a lot of people were in the Christian denomination, that, even if they went to the public school there.
Sure.
So still very homogenous in the religious way. So lots of biases running around there,
I
of
can
course.
imagine.
So first, I had the birds and the bees talk from my mom in the 4th or 5th grade, I think.
Okay,
from a Viagra commercial.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that's a place to start.
Yes. Which is hilarious. Because I was what? I was what's that for? It was this weird 50-year-old man, and he just looked despondent in this commercial, and I was what's Viagra? And my mom was well, it's time, I guess. You're going to learn about it next year.
All the rapid text could cause death. Blah, 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 blah. Mom?
I know, and I'm oh my God, that's terrifying.
Yeah,
Is he going to die? And she's no, he just wants to have sex. And oh, by the way, sex is
this thing. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but so I had a heads up going into it, but 6th grade is when we had the science class first, intro to sex ed. And it was a couple weeks, I think. It was we learned about puberty, and then sex ed was 3 days of the puberty section.
Got it. Okay.
Right. So there were whoever answered the most questions throughout the class period would be crowned the puberty king or queen.
Cool.
This was my male science teachers. Like,
Okay.
honestly, his
Okay.
name was Mr. I. He was hilarious.
I'm
Like,
processing. Yes.
absolutely. Yeah, he was hilarious, and he did make it like very normal to talk about and
Good.
engaging as he could
Okay.
for a group of sixth graders.
Yeah,
So
good.
he did a great job
Okay.
with what he was given.
Right, right, right.
Um, but about 2.5 days of that, of the sex ed, once we got to those days, was all about penises. To not my surprise now, but I was like, oh, we have to be getting to, because I am hadn't gotten my period yet then. But you're thinking about it. Your friends have gotten their
Sure.
periods, like bodies are
Yes.
starting to change, everything.
Yes.
And I wanted to learn about it more. And we spent exactly half a class period on periods.
Hmm.
And this is from my memory, but I just remember
Yes.
being so like, and what? Like, what's following up after this? And then there was like
Yes.
not a follow-up.
Hmm. Interesting.
Yeah. So I was just like, okay, that was puzzling. And so that was sixth grade,
Yeah.
still in my public middle school, mind
Yes.
you. So we
Yes.
pivot to eighth grade,
Okay.
and my public middle school brings in this program that I'm curious if you've heard of it. It's called Project Keepsake.
No, but I don't like the name and what we've been talking about, so I'm afraid of the purity. I'm already sensing it, but tell me about it.
Yeah. Because I can't remember. I was just listening to one of your episodes. I think it was like, yeah, I don't remember which. It was like episode 230-ish,
Okay.
but someone was talking about a program that was a very similar purity culture one. But basically, it was instead of going to our social studies class for a week, we had these two people, a man and a woman, that came in to be a part of Project Keepsake.
Classic, classic. Mom, dad, here we
And
go.
and you bet your bottom dollar it was all about celibacy.
Oh, no,
You
no.
bet you wish it wasn't,
Uh,
but you bet it was.
uh, classic.
And so yeah, they split us up by gender, by girls and boys in rooms across the hall,
Uh,
in our social studies room for a week. And we hit all the highlights. So it was the STD genital slideshow, a kind of like humiliation role play
oh,
event where I
no.
don't remember exactly how it functioned, but someone had a label that they were a porn addict. And it was like how that made them grosser or like like it was a
Oh,
really weird
no.
labeling thing.
Yeah.
And I think maybe it was like you never really know what people are doing. Very untrustworthy. I forget. Yeah, the undertones were not great.
The listeners
Um,
can't see my faces of cringe that are happening, and I'm just like, oh God, okay, okay, wow.
I know it was a lot. And among some other activities, I also remember chief among the things I took away from that was that if you kiss someone while you're lying down, that you will get pregnant.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
But of
Right,
course,
right, right,
but
of
of course,
course. Right, right, right. I'm like, asterisk, please, listener, you know we're joking, right? You know?
no, I'm like
The tone
sarcasm
was there.
heavy, please.
Yeah, yeah,
So much
yeah,
sarcasm.
exactly. Someone's reading the transcript and not listening. They're like, what are these people saying? It's like, no.
No, like this show is not about what I thought it was at
Exactly,
all.
exactly, exactly. Dr. Nicole, who, right?
I know,
Yeah.
literally, no,
Yeah,
very
I
much
know.
sarcasm.
Yep.
But basically, we got to the end of this week, and so on Friday of that week, after this paralyzing terror of
Yes.
this like quote unquote sex education,
Right.
we then all boys and girls all get rejoined in the same room, and they hand us out these little sheets of orange paper, and they had like a line on it and like some text in a line, and we didn't know what it was. What do you think they handed to a group of eighth graders to sign?
A commitment pledge to say that they weren't going to have sex until they were married.
Indeed, you would be right. Right.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm here. You know what I mean? I'm like,
I
this
know.
is, I know. I was like, for sure,
I
commitment
know.
pledge.
I know. It's so
Not a
I will
condom.
never forget. I know. Yeah, not a condom.
Or a
Yeah,
dental dam. No.
no, never. It could never be that because that would be too safe. Um, yeah, so they handed them out to us, and I distinctly remember I was sitting at my table. Keep in mind, by this point, I have been reading like fan fiction on Wattpad, which is like very smutty,
Yes.
like basically stories written about bands, and like the One Direction one is the most famous, right? Where
Okay.
it's like YA
Sure.
novels, romance, like all the most ridiculous things. So I
Yes.
have been reading these books on my iPad, like into the early hours of the morning for a while now in middle school. So and my friends all at my table have as well. And so I will never forget all of us just got up and threw them in the trash. I looked at our social studies teacher who did not endorse like this education. Like he just had to let it happen in his classroom because he was told to. Like he wasn't the one teaching us any of the material. And he like looked at us, he was like, hell yeah.
Huh?
And I went home and told my
Yeah.
mom, and she was like proud of you. Like that is
Good.
because it's so creepy. It is the creepiest
Yeah.
premise. It is such a
Yeah.
creepy premise.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And as a therapist, right, thinking about trauma-informed care, you have to know that there were people in that room who had already had sex, right? Some of that
Oh, absolutely.
consensually,
Yeah.
some of that non-consensually. And so
Right.
the messaging that they give in that paradigm around that, it's so lacking trauma-informed care that it genuinely makes me concerned for the ethics of the people that are impacted by that. I think it's a very delicate balance as a therapist because we want to be culturally humble to different
Mhm.
practices. And so, like, how do I respect that practice? And that being balanced with my understanding of trauma informed care, right? And so, if we're bringing
Mhm.
in something like that that does not have a trauma informed understanding of, again, the fact that many people will have already had sex at that point, and some of that being especially non consensual sex, like
Right.
huge problems. And so I think that's where the ethics of a therapist being between the lines of cultural humility and doing the best that we can for our clients and our community really comes to head in this very complex way, to which I say, that's not ethical. That's where I stand. That's where I'll put my flag, in terms of saying, like, yeah, no. You know what I mean? I want to respect, but no.
Right. Absolutely. And I think something as someone who my attention was always turned towards psychology, like
Mm-hmm.
especially when later on in high school and everything, turning towards a career and thinking about college majors, I genuinely could not see myself doing anything else that
Yeah.
would be even close to fulfilling. But on that journey there, I think the journey towards being a sex and relationship therapist, a huge part of that was receiving all of this media and shame and all of the layers of guilt that we associate with sexuality that's handed to us on silver platters our entire life. But at the same time, seeing the resilience and thought that I had, my friends have, my family, other people I associate with, purely from the bravery to not just settle for
Mm,
the baseline of what's being told to you. Like
yeah.
the bravery to be curious
Mm-hmm.
and to know that you deserve to be confident in your pleasure. Like that there's
Right.
always such a disconnect there. Like
Mm-hmm.
when there's any kind of conversation surrounding limiting sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
And if you take the fulfillment and the curiosity of sexuality, then what else do you have? Like there's nothing like there's no humanity left in it.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's just like
Yeah.
what is the purpose of it
I mean,
anymore?
Handmaid's Tale procreation at that point, that's what,
100%. Yeah.
like, yeah, for sure. And so I'm thinking about in your story the power of different systems, right? When you are a student, there's a power dynamic with your
Mm.
teachers and the leaders there that you have to legally be in that space because, America requires a certain level of education and it's easy to go
Right.
through this format, right? And so here you are, where you're sitting down, someone else is standing up and they're telling you, right? Thank the universe that you had other friends who
Oh,
also threw
absolutely.
away the orange piece of paper because that's where we get so much of our resilience, right? Is in community. It's
Mm.
why I love having a podcast like this that is global, right? Because I know so many of my listeners have tuned in from areas like rural Idaho who don't have
Oh.
anybody, you know, who are here in this kind of consciousness. And it's like, no, don't worry, there are people
Yes, and it's
around the
like, Queen,
world.
we're here for you. We're here for you, Queen.
Exactly.
Don't, yeah,
Exactly. And so, and we need that to feel empowered
100%.
to throw away the orange piece of paper, right? And
Yeah,
so, metaphorically, in so many different areas of our
yes, I
life,
love that.
fat cat is a green, yes. Um,
Oh, adorable.
she will bite me. I gotta be careful. Again, it's
She's
her
looking
house,
sideways at you.
her podcast. I'm just happy to be here. Hope you're happy too, fat cat. Great. Um, um, and then also your parents, right? So when you come home
Yeah,
and your
yeah,
parents were supportive of you, huge. Where my parents bought me my purity ring, right? So I don't think I could have
right,
came
right.
home to throw away the piece of paper for them because they
Mhm.
wouldn't have accepted that, right? So part of your resilience comes from you, who you are as a being, as well as your parents, as well as the other classmates, right? And so it really changes that moment of what it means for you.
Oh,
Whereas,
100%.
yeah, if you came home and your mom was like, how dare you? Why didn't you? Right? You'd be facing a really significantly more complex situation. And I'm sure you've seen that in the clients that you work with and the clients I work with in terms of how hard that is when parts of our expansive sexuality, expansive relationships are not met with the minimum of acceptance. I like to think
100%.
encouragement, but the
Yeah,
minimum of acceptance. It can be so hard for us.
right. And the freedom to reject without it leading to conflict.
Mm,
Like rejecting an ideal because it doesn't serve you anymore doesn't mean it's negative or that you're demanding it also has to get taken away from someone else. But especially within family dynamics, within how we understand our relationship dynamics around us. And like you said, the environment, like that's something that can make such a poignant difference and has to change to make a poignant difference a lot of the time,
mm-hmm,
which can be
mm-hmm.
incredibly difficult when if someone is suffering or someone is
Yeah.
doesn't feel like they can look inwards and be curious about their identity without being bullied or ostracized, isolated, anything. That separation holds us back from so much.
Absolutely, because we're social beings. We
Mhm.
thrive in community, and from an evolutionary standpoint, it's how we survived. We were in groups, right? And so when you are ostracized, that is one of the most dangerous things. That's why isolation is a form of torture for humans,
Yeah,
right? We will literally
yeah.
torture people by putting them into isolation. And
And it's an
so,
extremely effective form of
yes.
torture as well.
Exactly. And so when there are parts of ourself, this is what the feminists would call the relational paradox in psychology. If there are parts of ourselves that we fear bringing into the relationship because it could cause disconnection, that's the relational paradox. That moment where you're like, wow, this authentic part, do I bring it in and fear the possible threat of disconnection, or do I
Mhm.
hold it back, which means I disconnect from myself? Right?
Ooh, yeah,
And of course, I think as a queer person, I'll add my own addendum into that of or just like any marginalized identity that like we're not truly cutting off from ourselves when we hold that back. That is also
right,
an
right.
act of protection and empowerment and choice because these environments are not always safe. But that like relational paradox right there can say so much, and they would say that our suffering comes from disconnection. So the
Mm,
more parts of yourself that you cannot authentically bring in, the more suffering that you have, right? And so
right,
if you are in a workplace where you can't be authentically queer, hopefully you have a group at home, a community, friends where you can be more of that authentic self because that can bring some of the
right,
balance under these systems right now.
right. And carving out those spaces for you where it is possible. Like, yeah, whether it is online, in person,
Mm-hmm.
however it can be manufactured. But it's so interesting that you mentioned that relationship paradox
Mm-hmm.
feeling and just reality because it made me think of something I discuss very often in the clinical setting. And it can come up really about anything, but
Sure.
especially when discussing relationships and sexuality,
Uh-huh.
is that vulnerability a lot of the time feels very similar, if not the same, as embarrassment
Mm,
to us, like physically as we exist in our bodies. Like to me, it is kind of parallels how anxiety and excitement can like shoulder one
sure,
another.
exactly.
Yeah, and so talking about how we can hold ourselves back from being vulnerable with people because it's
Right,
comfortable.
right,
So we don't get that flutter of worry that feels like, oh God, I'm about to embarrass myself really bad, when in reality, it's,
right,
oh, I'm about to open myself up and turn towards this person in a way that
right,
could make me so happy, but
right,
also could hurt me a lot.
right.
And that's what I'm afraid of.
Absolutely,
So it
absolutely.
can be very similar to embarrassment, but it goes like a step in a different direction almost.
And I think that's where it's about the container of who you're doing it with, right? So when we think about therapy, ideally, therapy is this container where you're able to authentically express yourself and be held in positive regard, loving regard,
Mhm.
reflection, challenging, all of the good things. But it's a container where you can be your authentic self and still be in connection. That's huge, right? And
Absolutely.
so in terms of sexuality, which so many people feel uncomfortable talking to their therapist about, which breaks my heart. And it breaks my heart even
Mm.
more when I hear that people are uncomfortable to talk to their couples therapist about sexuality. I'm like, what
Oh,
the fuck are we doing here? But I get it, the systems, you know? So it's like, please talk to your couples therapist about sex or come work with a different one. You know what I mean? Like, whoa.
yeah, absolutely.
You know, if they're uncomfortable, find another one, you know, like we'll give you some resources. Um,
Yeah.
but so in theory, right, that's that space that you're supposed to have. But for us who are all practicing this in our actual personal lives, right, it's really predicated upon your previous experiences with relationships, not just sex, but generally, right? So if we look
Mhm.
back to, you know, I'll use myself as an example. If we look back into family dynamics where if I expressed my no, I was told that I was being selfish, right?
Mhm.
From my mother. A woman is supposed to give, 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 give. If I say no, I want to do my own thing. No, Nicole, you're being selfish. That's wrong, right?
Mhm.
So that's from my own family dynamics coming back very young as I can begin, as I can remember. And then
Right.
also being taught that as a woman, it was my job to give my body to my husband, give my body,
Mhm.
not co create pleasure, but to give and satisfy my husband. So you can see that
Right.
language coming through. And so then when I'm first having sex with folks, for years, I don't think it was until my like mid 20s that I could actually say no during sex in terms
Yeah.
of, hey, I want to take a break. Hey, my vulva is sore. Hey, my vagina, I need more lube. Let's take a pause. Like, hey, I need to pee. Hey, I'm just not feeling it anymore. No, like that
Right.
moment of getting my voice out. You know, you can see how from the beginning of my upbringing, right? If I'm told that to do that makes me selfish, it
Mhm.
trickles into that moment. And then the next piece is who's holding that container with me. So if I had luckily I had a great partner, okay. But if I had a shitty well, let's not yours shitty. If I had a partner who was messy and still growing, they might look at me and say, no, Nicole, I want sex. Come on, put out, put out, put out. And that's going to be a
Right.
really hard
Right.
moment where I brought that vulnerability and then I'm getting pushed into even more self-negating. And so I've seen
Mhm.
clients have that. We know people who do that on all types of genders. Um,
Right.
Luckily, I had a lover who said, thank you. Thank you for
Mhm.
telling me what you need. Thank you for telling me how I can support you. Yes, absolutely. Let's stop. Let's
Yeah.
pause.
Yeah.
And that is the healing moment because we get hurt in relationships and we also heal in relationships, right? So you can see that full
Yes.
circle moment from my family upbringing, lovers, and then into this moment where a lover says it's okay, and then that starts a
Yeah.
whole new path forward. So I say that to the listeners who are tuning in who are like, I've tried to express my no and nothing happens. Part of me is curious, like, who are you saying it to? Because if you say
Right.
it to someone who
Right.
continues to pressure you, which is unethical and not okay in terms of consent frameworks, but there's so many people that do,
Right.
that is going to be a hard space to find your no. And that's not necessarily a reflection of you and your inability, but more so the context and the set and setting that you're in for that moment.
No, absolutely. It is, especially when that vulnerability isn't comfortable being sat in for very long, like because of that like panic that can come up, especially based on what our previous relationship experiences are. It is amazing what explaining to people what coercion
Yeah.
in a sexual situation looks like and how many people, myself included in my own like relationship history, like how often that is just viewed as the norm or just how like a hookup goes. And it's the reality of the situation is that is nothing of the case, but it is something that defies any age of any client. It defies age, defies gender, like coercion and actually talking about it. We still have a lot of work to get done in like the giving people a heads up about that on the
Mm-hmm.
way to sex education.
Yeah, absolutely. Because there's a lot of subtle ways that you can put pressure on people and dynamics. And
Mm,
so many people feel uncomfortable having a very direct conversation, which for me is one of my favorite things to say, like, hey, like, we're going to a play party. What kind of scene do you want? It's almost like it's just like tantalizing to start dreaming and fantasizing. It's like when you're creating a delicious meal and you're like, what do we want to make for the party? Like you get excited.
right,
You're like,
right.
the pie, the this, the that, like I guess you could just show up in the kitchen and throw some things together, but it's also nice to like plan and get excited about what you're baking, right? And so
Right.
I do think that that almost is predicated upon generational experiences as well, where the further you go back in generation, because it wasn't until 1993 that it was illegal in all of the states for husbands to rape their wives, because prior to 1993 there were some states that still had women considered to be property, and so there was a complete ability to see your wife as an object that you could have sex with at any time, and that was completely acceptable. And again, so that
Yeah.
wasn't outlawed until 1993. We're looking at the last 30
Mhm.
plus years right here, and that I think is an important, I know it's a heavy fact to bring into the space, but a necessary fact to remind us of where we're
Oh,
at
absolutely.
in terms of this conversation. And so when you're working with people who are older, or dear listener, when you're thinking about your mom, when you're thinking about your grandmother or anyone of that lineage, you have to remember that they grew up in a world where they were property, and that was very normalized. And so
Mhm.
this expectation of having to give your body to survive, let alone the fact that we couldn't have credit cards until the 1970s, right? And so you
I
really
was
couldn't.
literally just gonna
Yeah,
say,
there
yeah.
you go. Exactly, right? And so it's like you really couldn't live on your own, get your own bank account, all of that sort of stuff until then. And so we have to hold that as the context of what we're all unlearning and getting out of, especially if you're a woman or a femme. Like there is a long
Yeah.
lineage of all of that. And so, yeah, the older you look back, the more you can see just like highly problematic sexual encounters. You look at movies from the 80s, from the 90s, it
Oh, yeah.
is cringeworthy in terms of stuff that they're doing there.
Oh, absolutely. Especially just completely disrespecting the word no
Yeah,
at
yeah, yeah,
any
yeah.
point possible.
And that being romantic.
Yes, and like going out of the way to do so, going out of the way to show a woman
Damn
at
it,
any
damn it.
opportunity, going out of their way to say, to show a woman saying, please, please leave me alone. I do not like you. I am not attracted to you. You are bothering me. I am upset. I do not like you. Leave me alone. I will not date you. And then a guy saying, oh, sweetums, you don't know what you're talking about. Like that is so like way too much. For what? It's not funny. Like no one I was it funny then? I don't think so. Oh,
Yeah, yeah. And so I think this is where our cultural conditioning is. It's such an important thing
mhm.
to talk about with this because, sexuality, there's pieces to this that are innate. And I want to honor that, right? That
Absolutely.
I wake up and from my young age of middle schooler, God, even elementary school, I can remember being attracted to women. And that is something that is innate in me and a
Yeah.
part of my story. And also, I think it's important to remember that our sexual desires, our relational desires, are also impacted by the culture that we live in, right? A
Mm.
great example is ankles, right?
Yes.
Not erotic in our current context of the
No,
20s, you know.
no,
However, back in the day when you were not allowed to show your ankles, like you could be in big trouble for being a whore if you showed your ankle, right? There was people
right?
getting arrested in Chicago for wearing bikinis back in the day because that was too
Hmm.
scandalous, right? Things that we adjust to over time, right? And therefore have a different response to, where now when I see an ankle, I don't get like ridiculously turned on in this like whoa way, you know?
Right,
Um,
right.
or even when we do multicultural research, we'll see how folks will be attracted to different body sizes, right? And
Mm.
so in areas where maybe there are more diseases like malaria that it can impact your body size and impact your ability to live, a fuller body is often associated with more health and therefore more
Right.
attractive. Where in America, we had the 90s and the skinny jeans and the thigh gap bullshit that like
I know.
deeply impacted all of us, right?
Yeah, yeah. Beyond that as well, like how much we can even see the cycling of based on geographic location, but also I love like body image throughout history, like
Yeah,
anything relating to
huge.
that. I find it captivating to see how rapidly body cycles come in and out of fashion
Yes,
in such a morbid fascination way because it is a map of expectations that have been actively used to
right.
belittle and put down for thousands of years.
Absolutely.
Um, I just find it so interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really big indicator of the self in relation. So there is a
Mhm.
self, there's a Jane, there's a me, Nicole, there's a you, dear listener who's tuning in right now. And the reality is, our self is always in relation, right? So I am
Mm.
always interacting with my world, and that is forming my reality and who I am. A great example of that is the fact that this language that I am using to express myself comes from people who I do not know directly, but who have taught me how to speak, taught me what these
Yes.
words mean, right? So just a pure example there, right? And so
Mhm.
when we think about our sexuality and our desires as something that is in relationship with our culture, then yeah, ankles, body size, all of this sort of stuff. And so I want to be able, as an educator in this space, to walk the very thin line of honoring someone's innate desires of this is what I'm
Mhm.
actually attracted to, this is what I want, this is what feels good for me, and holding space for the very necessary curiosity and critical examination of what those things are, because we live
Mhm.
in systems of oppression, and so we can't just go, ah, that's my innate desire, don't tread on my
Right.
sexuality, you know, or whatever. it's
Right.
like it's like hold on a second, we're in some fucked up system, so we need to make sure and examine how deep those systems go into that
Yes.
sexuality. And that's tough work, it's uncomfortable work. And I'm always reminding listeners of the show is like, who said that dismantling systems of oppression is easy? It's not. And it's also
Yeah.
work we need to do. So, welcome to the show.
No, 100%. Especially what we you were even mentioning earlier with like the intergenerational connection as
Yeah.
well. I've been making just like Canva PDF
Cool.
handout things
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
But for a family friend, specifically surrounding like allyship, um,
Mm,
like with the LGBTQIA plus in
sure.
specific,
Yeah.
um, and even more specifically surrounding like gender pronouns, everything there.
Mm-hmm.
And my family and I, we talk a lot about like generations and how it shapes our view of the world and perspective. And out, on top of that, we also talk about almost like Adlerian psychology, like the family constellation and
Yes.
everything with like the birth order and stuff,
Sure.
mostly as like jokes and everything. But
Sure.
it's interesting because I, especially while making these handouts, have been doing everything I can to make it acutely approachable, coming from the perspective you were saying, where it's a lot to hear from someone when you've been going about the world one way for 40, 50, 60, 70 years, understanding this world in a much more binary perspective, it's a lot out of the blue if you piss someone off somehow, which is like warranted. Like if someone is okay to be pissed off, it's warranted to be frustrated that the world has changed and we've never had more access to more information ever. It is so daunting for all of us. So when making these, I wanted to do everything I could to make it approachable and deconstruct the idea that
Mm-hmm.
this generation understood it wrong the whole time.
Yeah.
I'm like, there's no wrongness happening here.
Mm.
We just had a sliver of understanding, and now we have a much larger picture. So coming at it from a lot of people probably don't know yet, even though to us, like working, like being like in the field of advocacy and like wanting to make sure we're multiculturally competent, like this could be something that to us, we're like, yeah, I've known about that since my freshman year of undergrad.
Mm-hmm.
But the dude in the finance class 2 buildings away, yeah, he wasn't going to learn that.
No.
So if we can repair it while trying to foster this curiosity and like this interest, because people do like history, even though you could argue that we don't really want to learn from it ever.
Sure.
People do like understanding a historical framework. Whether or not they agree with it is a separate thought, but coming at it from how can I encourage them to be curious first? Yeah, like exactly what you said is huge.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that I think that's why books like Sex at Dawn, I think, have
Mhm.
so much pull within the community because people are looking for more facts. You know, give me history, give me another way to see this, give me another lens, right? And so that gives them some sort of tangible point where they're like, oh, okay. And that's a lot of what
Yeah.
my dissertation was on relationship
Yes.
anarchy, going back into the history of marriage, the history of romantic relationships, and seeing, oh, this is actually a very new concept. Wow,
Yes.
okay, right? And so, yeah, when I am in my sex education class, they're not giving me this perspective of, hey, throughout history, human beings have done lots of different formations of types of relating, and specifically, most of it was not monogamous, but more recently in this current context, we are. And here's the thing, but also outside of our white Western bullshit, there are actually cultures that do currently practice things that are way outside the boundaries of monogamy or even the frame of non-monogamy, because that's a boundary that's
Yes.
formed by the majority, right? And so there are people around the world currently today that practice different types of relational ways of being, and it's great. They're having a good time. They're thriving, right? And so it's just this, it's so problematic. Essentially, the question here is who's writing the history, right? Because
Absolutely.
many of the writers of the history were white men who have decided to throw away all the other lineages where sexuality is spiritual and deeply connected to that practice. The lineages
Yeah.
where women are empowered, right? Yes, the lineages were two-spirit, non-binary, the whole thing, right? All of that gets thrown away through genocide and colonization and all those
Yep.
sorts of pieces to give you this very digestible, here's the story, here's all you need to know, and now go to work Monday through Friday and make us money. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's fucked.
Exactly.
It's crazy when you think about it.
No, exactly. And even our obsession, specifically in like more Western, but in the US mainly, the obsession with hyper monitoring other people's sexual lives
Mm,
and sexual interests, like of the day-to-day person, not the government officials, but of the day-to-day person, we need to very strictly police their sexual proclivities, of course. Sarcasm.
yeah. For the transcript who cannot hear the tone.
Yes, for the transcript, for the listener that can't see me like squinting my eyes really
Yeah,
hard,
yeah,
staring at the goal.
exactly.
But I have to wonder if any of it stems from the individualistic culture to begin with.
Mm,
Like here, we're so hyper independent versus a more collectivistic culture. If I view, or if I'm in an individualistic culture, innately my perspective is going to be more self-serving because
mhm,
that comes with the property.
mhm,
So if I hear your sex life and what it's like for you and what you're interested in. And for some reason, I am disturbed or confused or don't understand or have been taught to react a certain way to that negatively. I could understand why it would be like more likely that we take it personally and then make it everyone else's problem.
Mm,
Whereas in a collectivistic culture, you're like, we're all just here for the good of the people. We're all chilling. They're not disturbing anyone. We're fine.
hmm. Yeah.
Explaining that in a very simplistic way with that not being a fully formed thought at all.
I mean, I'm picking up what you're hearing and what you're putting down. I think it's an important thought. It's the reason why no one wants to do group therapy. You know what I mean? Like,
Oh my
give me the
gosh, yeah.
one-on-one. I just want to say right now, dear listener, that I run groups, and I think they are one of the most powerful ways to transform. Dare I say, more powerful than one-on-one, but that's a whole
Ew.
other podcast. But it's because of this literal thing that you're hitting on right now, which is
Yes. I
the
love running
individual.
groups as well.
Me too. I love my
It's
groups
so
that
much
I
fun.
run. Yes, 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 yes. I think we see how the more restricted you are in your own sexuality, the more that you want to police and control other people, right? Because
Mm.
for your own self, there's so many internalized rules and boundaries and things that are contracting you, contracting you, contracting you, contracting you. And
Yes.
so if you see someone else running without all of that weight, without all of those boxes, you say, how the hell are you you know, look at all these boxes I have. You must have all those boxes or there's something wrong with you, right? And so
Yes.
it's almost this way of when you're so restricted and you see someone else with freedom, it comes from jealousy and fear of the unknown. It's very evolutionary for us to be afraid of the other, of like, what is this
Totally.
unknown big box? Don't know what that is, right? And so, yeah, if you come, you know, like myself, when I was younger, I was the first person to condemn homosexuals. I like
Mm.
always talk
Yeah.
about on the podcast how I was in college and I was in a Bible class because I went to a Christian college as well.
Oh
Yay!
my gosh. I went to a Catholic Marianist college.
Oh, so fun! Wasn't that great for
Yes.
us? So
Yes. Well,
great, so great.
mine actually was. I did
Oh,
have a
okay,
good, like mine was not, mine was University of Dayton.
okay, got
So
it. So
it's
it's
not,
chill.
honestly, I have yet to be to a college campus where more heathen activities have happened.
Okay,
It's so
good,
in that capacity, it was very low stakes in terms
good.
of religious restriction, which was amazing.
I love that for you. That's the beginning of your liberation journey.
Exactly. Go Flyers.
Yeah,
Go Flyers.
yeah. And so I was in my Bible class and they had different topics and one of them was homosexuality and I chose that
Mhm.
topic intentionally and I chose to argue why it is sin, which is
Right.
crazy when you think about me in like early middle school, elementary school having these desires, having a big crush on Meg from Hercules, having a crush on Megan Fox and Jennifer's Body and that scene with
Oh,
Amanda.
of
Oh my
course.
God, dying. Wow, wow. And so
Okay, so
like
you like brunettes then. Come on.
yeah, I mean I like them all. What can I say? I
Beautiful, beautiful.
like them all. And so it's wild because you think like, wow, okay, here I am clearly having these desires. Why in college am I the one to get up and say it's absolutely sin, right? It's because I've gone through so much restriction during my education in Christianity that this is a sin. And so I have high levels of cognitive dissonance where anytime I have that thought, I'm like, wow, I'm sinning. Please, God, forgive me. Please, God, forgive me. I won't do it. And so I am putting so many boxes because of the society I'm around. Box, 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 box. And I have to restrict so damn hard that if I see
Yes.
you moving out there with freedom, I'm like, how dare you? I have worked so hard to manipulate myself into this extremely small box, and you're
Mhm.
not? Absolutely not, right? And so you can see the rage that starts to come from the psyche when you've been restricted so
Yes.
much. It
And that
just,
does make it feel so personal.
yeah, because you're like, I'm in the box. Why are you not in the box?
Yes. I'm gonna yell at you, so then I bully you into getting in the box with me because it's lonely in here and this sucks and I want you to be miserable too.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I was talking about something so similar in session maybe a couple weeks ago where we
Mm-hmm.
were talking about a relationship dynamic, specifically focusing on one partner being more free, like
Mm,
more generally laid back and go with the flow and
hmm
not as type A and planning everything out to like whatever. And how the more laid back partner would frustrate
mm,
the very not laid back partner a lot. And that would be not necessarily a source of conflict, but make conflict a little bit closer to the surface
mm-hmm,
than it would have been otherwise.
hmm
Yeah, it's very interesting because it is, in a way, this like overcompensation, right? Where, okay, if I deep down am scared that I am bi or gay or like women, as someone who grows up in this very strictly Christian or Catholic framework, how can I make sure and massively make sure that no one suspects and no one can sniff me out like
Yeah,
anything? Yeah,
it's exhausting.
it is. But it's
Really.
so interesting. I love the way you described that though,
Mm.
because it really just does paint such a spotlight onto why people behave that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think I hold that as an opportunity to have compassion for that
Absolutely.
person, the person that you see yelling profusely, to have compassion for them. And I don't say to turn the other cheek in the Jesus way.
Right.
I think
Right.
that you do have to protect yourself under these systems. And so when we are being actively harmed, when the state is causing violence against us, like some of the stuff I'm seeing now in Chicago with different groups of people, I'm not saying turn the other cheek in any capacity.
Right.
But does that give us a little bit more to go to bed at night when you see that person holding that sign, a little bit like, wow, they are psychologically going through so much cognitive dissonance and manipulation and propaganda that's what they're
Right.
in. Yeah,
Right.
for me, that makes me sleep a little bit better at night. But that's not where the story ends. That's where we start more activism. We do more. We don't
Exactly.
necessarily immediately invite that person into our circles because they're not safe
Right.
right now, right?
Right.
And transformative justice, the whole thing, right? We got figuring all of that out. It's a long, long, complex conversation, but I think at least in my own life, that gives me some grounding, and then from there, like you just the spectrum of things that you can grow into, right? When you were talking about vulnerability,
Mm.
I had one supervisor who talked about sex being so vulnerable, and for me, I had such a hard time hearing that word with where I'm at now. She was like, "Well, sex can be so vulnerable," and I was like, "Is it? I don't think it's vulnerable. It's fucking empowering. I am roaring up in there. I am growling. I am in my body. I am strong. I am empowered. What do you mean vulnerable? Like I am not a little dog over here crawling away, like ready to get kicked. I'm fucking on
Right.
top. Like what? Like I don't like. So it's so interesting, like the different frames to what people have
Yeah.
and see that act to. I mean, I can see how like yes, inherently it is vulnerable. Like sleeping is vulnerable, right? When you're sleeping,
Right. Right.
you're quite literally in a vulnerable place where a lion could come get you. And if you are having sex, yes, that is a vulnerable space where the lion could come eat you. However,
Right.
like the frame to it all, I'm like, damn, I see this as empowering, like a moment we can step into our power and hold it. So it's really fascinating, the language around it.
Totally. Or even a little bit differently, I've talked with and like experienced some moments of this within myself, but some people where like the vulnerability part of sex isn't really present, not necessarily because there's an overly positive like confidence or empowerment factor like
Mm-hmm.
you were describing, but because they've become very comfortable with
Mm.
their capacity of sexual performance
Mm.
rather than focusing on their own pleasure.
Yeah. Which could be way
Which,
more vulnerable.
oh, totally. Which go this kind of when I'm saying that, I kind of mean it's separate from the faking it performance generally,
Mm.
even though that is absolutely a performance.
Yeah.
Um, but even beyond that, a performance of like every time you have sex is for the other person. Like you
Mm.
are not having sex for yourself or for your own experience of pleasure because either you weren't in a
Yeah.
position to be curious about it, you don't feel safe or comfortable enough in your body to explore your sexuality in that way,
Yeah.
and etc. Like many other reasons. But I think that piece as well of why there could be a disconnect between kind of the external sexual self and my internal metric of pleasure and experience is because of that performative piece.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's something that I'm always talking about and teaching in my pleasure, liberation, sexuality groups when we talk about that,
Yes,
is
yes.
being able to like differentiate between the external and the internal pleasure. And I recently wrote a newsletter for my pleasure activist newsletter, and I titled it Spit, Swallow, Savor. Which I thought, oh, you did? You saw it? Okay.
I saw it and my eyes went big. I was like, ooh, what's this one?
Ooh, what's this one about? Yeah. It's literally, I think
Yeah.
about that. I mean, I thought that was such a important piece. So people are like always like spit or swallow. I'm like, what about savoring this? What about enjoying this? What? You know?
Yeah. You're like, I bet you guys didn't think about that one, did you?
Yeah, did you? Hello. All the people subscribed. Hello. And I think it's reminding me of what you're saying, because in that newsletter, I was talking about how so many of us have been socially conditioned to, specifically in this example, to suck cock and do it for the other person. And I was thinking about Betty Martin's Wheel of Consent. And part of her wheel talks about the ways that when you're giving, it can also be for your own pleasure. And so I think
100%.
so many of us, when we're, myself included, when we're giving, we're thinking, okay, how do I move my mouth and my tongue and my hand and my other hand, because I like to get really deep in there, in ways that help that person to feel good, get them off.
Right,
And so
right.
my brain is not thinking, wow, how do I feel their shaft around my lips? How does that feel sliding down my own tongue? How do I actually make this feel good for me as well as them, right? And so it's a balance, but I think for the majority of us, it's been really lopsided, where the thought is like give. And the reality is we can also give while receiving our own pleasure, hence the newsletter, hence what I was trying to hit there. And I think what you're speaking to is like, so many people are focused on the external, and there's still a way to give to others and also internally receive pleasure while you're doing it.
Right. And this is not an original thought of mine. I read it somewhere. I wish I could remember where. Discussing it literally could have been you, honestly. I'm like, I wonder. So let me know if it is. But the power dynamic that's present within, let's say, within a heterosexual relationship, like vulva owner, penis owner, and within that typical dynamic, the societal expectation, it would be for the vulva owner to be more in that giving of pleasure rather than expecting to receive pleasure. Typically. And we're flipping the script, we're working to flip it, and we're changing it every day, which is amen to that. But
yeah, exactly. Amen. Lord's work.
Yes, there we go. Truly doing the Lord's work. But the power dynamics present in that are typically associated with the penis owner having the power in that exchange. But in reality, thinking about the power that you hold as the person giving the pleasure in that moment, truly, in my 24 years, never once has someone said that and said, did you ever think about the power you have?
Yeah, that was in the newsletter. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, I knew it was you. As I was saying it, I was like, this was totally, I was like, no one's ever said that to me. And
man.
I was like, yeah. So that resonated, that landed. Like that very much gave. I love when, and I tell this to my clients in session too, when you have like one-liners in therapy that you're like, I ate with that one. That one was so good. And you're like, I know that one hit. That one hit so good. And they're like, yeah, that was good.
Amazing. And I have all respect to pay to the dominatrix that have been on the show over the last 5 years, because I didn't have that consciousness before. And they were like, no, Nicole, you are empowered. Sit them down. And I was like, what? What do I do? What? You know, like what? like just like
And you're like,
shaking,
yes,
like,
ma'am.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
ma'am.
yeah, got it. Okay, you know what I mean? And so it's like, I have all respect to pay to them for like opening those doors to me of seeing like,
100%.
then again, as we're saying, the narrative is like you suck cock to give to that person, you're, blah, 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 and
Right. And that it's
disempowered.
your obligation. This is how
Yes.
things work. You have to do this,
Yes.
X, Y, Z. Meanwhile, it's
Yes.
like the penis owner is just showing up and leaving.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, think about the fact that you could bite that dick off at any point.
Right.
Talk about the power. Like, are you like, okay, we're not going to do that because we love our people, but like, think about the power
Absolutely.
you have right there. Like, right there. They're very tender in your mouth. Let's be
Right.
very clear.
And it does, like, it is cyclical to any kind of giving of pleasure. It is vulnerable just as much for the person giving, whether it's involving a penis or a vulva. Like,
Hmm.
whoever is the receiver of the pleasure is both experiencing a lot of positives in that moment and exercising so much trust.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the transformation. Once you have that frame
Mhm.
shift, you're able to go into the act, even though the act itself might be the same, right? You
Right.
might be doing physically the exact same things, but the psychological frame shift is completely different. And as a therapist, like we know how important it is to have a frame shift, even if the outcome
Mhm.
is the same. The frame of that, rather than I'm giving and I'm giving my power away to no, I'm commanding this moment and I'm holding the power. I'm holding the tenderness of the
Yes.
moment as I suck this cock. That is a huge frame shift that then you hold more confidence in your body and you have more pleasure doing it, right? And so
Right.
the mind is so powerful. We are powerful story making monkeys with
Mhm.
souls and hearts. And we we will fight about the color of a towel inside a home, and we will say we won't have sex for a three-letter word called God, right? And
Mm.
the
Yeah.
stories and the meaning making and the sacredness around that is different across cultures, right? And so we are lacking, I would say, in our current context, a empowered pleasure-based narrative around sexuality, specifically for women, femmes, folks who do not conform to the gender binaries. Like we are lacking
Yes.
queer and empowered narratives, non-monogamous narratives of what it means to do that, which is why I find it such an honor to be able to create this space, an honor to have people like you who come onto the show, an honor to have people who are tuning in, and the ways the newsletter is rippling through consciousness, the way the episodes are rippling through consciousness, because that's how we create real change. It's not overnight.
Right.
It's these small little steps where we now start to carry ourselves in completely different ways. And my favorite part about it is that how you show up in a sexual dynamic reverberates through other areas of your life. When you come
Yes.
into that space, whether it's a dungeon, whether it's outside in nature, some of my favorite spots, whether it's in your own house, right? When you show up with that confidence, you're going to show up to that next meeting at work with a much bigger chest, as long as you work through all the shame that you might hold as you like space and code switch, which I
Right.
hate that we have
Right.
to live in that world. But, you still come in with more confidence of, I know how to ask for what I want. I know how to command
Yes.
this moment, and I know what I deserve. And that's where I find this work to be so deeply political. It's almost like a
Mhm.
door into so much more politics, where I'm like, oh, you're interested about sex? Yes, come
Yes.
talk to me. Come. Like,
Right.
what
Right.
voice is
But
that? Like a witch? Like, am I like inviting people into my house? I'm like, come.
yeah, like maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I know. I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it is
Political.
mind-boggling, especially, and this is something that, I mean, anyone working in any kind of mental health field could tell you, but especially within sex and couples therapy and how stigmatized it is, people think it is something that it really is not at all. And same goes for therapy largely in general, right? So, like, we can say that alone.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I always tell clients, even just to put at ease, because I always want there to be a mutual sense of collaboration in agency,
Of
because I
course.
feel like people lose that understanding
Yeah.
in therapy. They
Yes.
forget that it's a collaborative experience, that like you also are responsible for running the ship. Like it's a responsibility. But within the taboo surrounding couples and sex therapy, I just wish people would understand how little sometimes we actually talk about sex in the room,
Oh, yeah.
where it could be 2.5 minutes of describing a sexual experience and then 48 minutes of talking about context ranging from childhood to work-life balance stress to religiosity to insecurity, past relationship dynamics, cycles of abuse, cycle like consent, like anything. Like
Yeah.
it is truly how little we sometimes we are going to talk about sex a lot, but I always emphasize so much to clients, especially when we're first building rapport. Number one, that I'm a perfect stranger and I am happy to help, and we can do as shallow of a dive or as deep of a dive as we would like to go, but I'll go at their speed, but especially when we're starting out. And beyond that, that we really don't have to talk about the nitty-gritty, like stop by stop moment details of their sex life if they don't want to.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's very shocking to people. Like they don't
Mm-hmm.
expect that. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, you want to fix or build insight or attempt to gain more knowledge in whatever area.
Right.
That's great. But it doesn't have to be as intensive as I think, as a lot of people think it has to look.
Right. Yeah, I think it's nice to describe it as a spectrum, right? Where we
Yes,
could
yeah,
absolutely be getting into the nitty-gritty, the specifics of what hole with what vibrator with what thing and how that created. Gosh,
right.
even for myself, I know like I'm remembering a moment where like I was getting fucked from one of my partners with a penis, and then he was using like a dildo in my mouth. And the idea of me potentially getting fucked by two penis holders at the same time just hit this moment where I shattered of all of the purity culture stuff. And I was like, oh my God, I'd be such a whore if I had two cocks and at the same time. And I just start crying, right? Like, yeah, like maybe
Yeah,
we got to get into the specifics of where you were being penetrated, why, what was happening. Because
right.
like it hit something.
So there might be snafus along the way. Like that's gonna happen too, and it's
Yep.
okay. Like,
Yep.
but we have to be able to work through those and prepare ahead of time for those.
Right. And also, maybe, like we said at the beginning, maybe we're processing from the very beginning how my mom called me selfish for having boundaries in
Right,
sex
right.
therapy, because that's actually the roots of it all. Or, and
Mhm.
also, like, with all the stuff going on, we were talking about the protest that's going on for today, right?
Yes,
Like,
yes.
sex is about play.
Mhm.
You cannot play when your world is on fire. You cannot
Yes.
play when your government is actively attacking you, when your
Yep.
government is actively making it unsafe to have the identities that you have and the things you want to do. Like,
Right.
so when my clients come in and saying, I have no sexual desire right now, yeah, that makes sense under these current systems. I too would not want to be playing under these current systems,
Right.
right?
Right.
And so I think there, like, I appreciate what you're saying about sex therapy being more expansive, right? It's not always just
Totally.
like this, then that, then this, then that. We have to be able to understand that sexuality is, it's like a systems level perspective, right? There's multiple systems
100%.
here that impact this. And so when you're working with a sex therapist, you're going to go into all these different areas, and it's all a part of the process. And I love
Yeah.
doing integration work. I
Mhm.
do integration work with psychedelic assisted psychotherapy, and I also love doing integration work with scenes and people like myself. That scene I had where there's
Yeah,
a
yeah.
dildo and a partner, and I'm like shattered, like what does this mean
Mhm.
anymore? Like there's so much to integrate. I've had so many clients who are like, I had this scene last year and I still am processing what it means for me and my community, and we can like walk
Right.
through that, right? So it's like the full range of possibilities is here. And I what I appreciate about sex therapy is it opens the door into a world where so many people do feel so uncomfortable, and hopefully through that act of talking to someone like you or talking to someone like me, every time you do that, you're building your capacity through exposure therapy to be able to name your experience. And
Right.
that, I can confidently say, leads to more pleasure. The more you flex that muscle of speaking what you want, what you need, what happened to you, that leads to more pleasure.
Right. Could not agree more with everything you just said. On top of that, so much of what I am discussing with people day in and day out has to deal with either grief or
Hmm.
safety
Mm-hmm.
in some capacity.
Yeah.
So, just like you were saying, if the world around us is imploding and hate speech is flying around everywhere and everything feels so incredibly suffocating, of course that's going to affect your desire because that's affecting the safety of your reality and even more so your mental landscape.
Hmm.
When we think about how much of sexuality and of our sexual experience is happening in our head, but we aren't socialized to understand that part about ourselves. We're not socialized to be kind to that part of ourselves.
Hmm.
And then talking about safety and processing what is required or what is in our control to make our environment feel safe. It really is, yeah, it's incredibly difficult. It's very frustrating because it's focusing on what you can make your frame of reality. Like, what can you control in your day-to-day life that will make things a little bit easier for you to wake up tomorrow? A
Hmm.
little bit easier for you to run up and give your partner a kiss on the back of the neck when they're making dinner, just because.
Yeah,
Like, what'll
absolutely.
make it more likely for you to turn towards your partner when, and rather
Hmm.
than like snap at them when you're pissed off or something.
Hmm.
And with grief, additionally, like I talked so much about grieving not only like past relationships, but like past identities of the self,
Oh, yeah. I was a different woman
which,
after that scene I'm telling you about, you know?
oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah, different woman.
yes. It's so important to, it's so important because like we, especially, and again, like Western culture, US, the whole thing, but we aren't very good with change. We suck with change and we suck with grief. And I think they're very interlinked. So like we
Oh,
aren't
yeah.
socialized to responsibly handle grief a lot of the time. And we're told to just turn towards religion and spirituality, which can be wonderful and peaceful and reparative, but that's not always reparative for the day-to-day ins and outs of the experience of grief.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's connected. Capitalism, it's grief is not a productive emotion under
Yeah,
capitalism. And so
yeah.
it's highly connected. And one of my favorite things I always say on the podcast is that I cry hard and I come hard. And those two things are absolutely connected, right? Because
There we
it's
go.
about
There
being
we
able
go.
to feel in your body and to be able to release in your body and to be able to have both of
Mm,
those. And the reality is that no matter what emotions we're talking about, you can't pick and choose which ones you feel. So if you want to feel
right,
more pleasure, you're going to feel more pain. So welcome to the human
right.
existence, giving you a hug. Love you, dear listener. Hello, welcome to the journey. But that is what
Yes.
it is. Becoming a pleasure activist means you're going to cry a lot more, right? So you
Oh my
have to be
gosh.
able to
Yeah.
sense, you have to be able to feel. And I think it's so important too with these current contexts where there is so much going on that's outside of your control. As you said, like focusing on what is within your control, showing up at that protest, being able to have these moments. And also, there's top down processing in terms of the brain impacting the body, right? So from like the
Mhm.
top, the brain to the body down, although it's all the body, but that's figuratively how we talk about it in the field, right? There's also bottom up processing, essentially focusing on the body to help the mind. And I'm always reminded of the earlier research on hysteria, which I have lots of thoughts about as a feminist
Oh,
psychotherapist. So we don't even have to get into that. But back in
I'm
the
like, we could
day,
talk about,
oh yeah,
like,
I'm like, you
oh, we
want
could chat.
next
We could
episode?
chat.
No,
Yes,
no.
yes.
But back in the day, vibrators were created as a tool to treat hysteria. And so they would
Yes.
bring people with vulvas to climax to treat hysteria, right? A lot has changed in the history since that time, but there are also ways of, I'm not saying you have to do this, but an invitation where sometimes under these systems, I have no sexual desire. I look at the news, I look at all the stuff happening, and I'm like, fuck. And also, I can sit down if this is an empowering moment. I can sit down and say, I have this vibrator. I am going to use this right now to bring myself some joy and pleasure so that way I can get back into living my life and the activism work that I do. And I say that because it's not always, I think sometimes people are waiting for desire. They're waiting for that
Mm,
moment. They're
yeah.
waiting to feel, which makes me think a lot of Emily Nagoski's new book of Come Together. And rather than waiting
Yes,
for the
yes.
desire, just actually doing the act and feeling the pleasure of it, right? Because sometimes we get so locked in like waiting to want the ice cream. Why don't you just go buy the ice cream and trust that when you take the bite, you'll want it? You know what I mean?
Right.
And if you
Right.
don't, you can throw it away. So like, you know, like I say that as like as someone who's living in these systems as much as you are and all of us, dear listeners, of days where I just feel like I have zero sex drive because the system is so fucked up. And I can still sit down and create a time for myself to really take care of myself with a vibrator, putting it there and creating that experience of endorphins in my body so that I can feel good again. And
Yeah.
sometimes I don't. Sometimes I don't come. We just put it to the side and that was great too. But like there is
Right.
ways to do bottom up processing too, right? And so I want to invite all the listeners to know like there's that moment where you can choose to do that and not just wait for the desire, which might be really tricky under these current political systems. And also, of course, you don't have to do that at all, right? There's this space and opening. It's an offering to take what resonates with you and leave the rest always in this space, you know?
100%. And I think an ongoing conversation that I've been seeing a lot, like online, social media, what have you, especially when, like, with this broader conversation of, hey, so tyranny seems
Yeah.
like it's here, y'all, and I have to go to my 9 to 5 because it's such a common emotion. It's such a cohesive feeling that all of us have right now, or many of us have, should I say, or honestly, at the very least, knowing that something is unsettled and wrong with how things are going in whatever direction, what have you. But like it's distracting, but I have found pieces of empowerment in, well, is it not just the most massive fuck you to, in the face of this disgusting and deplorable environment that has been curated by these terrible people wanting to do nothing but harm, is it not such an ultimate act of rebellion to maintain joy where I can and to find pleasure where I can and to manufacture that for myself, to go out of my way to make some damn time, even though I have none of it. None of us do. None of us have the capacity for anything that's not already on our plate. But would it not be just even a little bit more of a fuck you to give this gift to myself right now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's a long line of lineage of queer liberation with that, right? Of stepping
Oh,
into
absolutely.
joy, right?
Yeah.
Of like, yeah.
Queer people, BIPOC, absolutely. Like these are like echoes of experiences that
Mm-hmm.
people that do not look like either of us have been
Yep,
telling the stories of for a very long time, for the listener,
exactly.
to white women.
Yep.
But like learning from and lifting up the experience here is something that we have the privilege to take action on. And in
Absolutely.
whatever capacity that action can be taken, if you can't be in person at a protest for whatever reason, doing what makes you feel fulfilled
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and getting creative with it. Even just drawing out a sign or something, like doing
Yeah.
something that makes you feel included and empowered.
Yeah, absolutely. There are many ways, and we all have our threads of the tapestry to pull, right? And so
Yes, absolutely.
trusting that you'll find your thread and pull it, find that and whatever it is, you know, being conscious of where our money goes, being conscious of what we're spending our time and energy on, right? Like all of that really does dismantle the system very slowly, as much as I want to light it on fire, but
Right,
very
right.
slowly we are doing that work, right? And
Yeah.
so it's been such a joy to have you on the podcast today, Jane. Such a joy.
Yes, I feel like this flew by. I
Ah,
don't know.
that's a good
Yeah,
sign. That's a good sign.
I'm so overjoyed that I got to talk to you and just so happy to be
Oh,
on. So yeah, thank you so
yeah.
much.
It was such a joy, such a joy. People have always asked me, like, how did you do this while in grad school? And I would say, well, the things that are authentically joyful to you bring you so much energy, right? You have a conversation, it
Yes, yes.
flies by, and you're like, whoa, okay, right? And so inviting all of us as much as possible to find those things and trust in those things. And so as we're closing out together, I'll take a deep breath with you. And I'll check in and see if there's anything else you want to share with the listeners. Otherwise, I have a closing question I can ask you.
No, but I think I'm good.
Okay. Great. Well, then the last question that I ask all of my guests on the show is, what is one thing that you wish other people knew was more normal?
Mm. I think I have to say arousal non-concordance. The understanding of it, I feel like the only normalized piece of it in sexual experience is like whiskey dick,
Sure.
you
Molly
know?
Dick.
Or like,
Yep.
yeah, like when you're, or just like when you're too drunk, whatever, and can't get turned on. But the reality of what arousal non-concordance means, and like that mind-body connection, exactly what you were describing earlier, but it was something that I didn't have a term to describe. And
Mm.
even just hearing about because like within my friend groups, I like it did not like lose my virginity until like a little bit later on, which was
Mm.
fine. But
Mm-hmm.
like hearing about everyone's sexual experiences, I was always confused as to why there was a disconnect
Mm-hmm.
between when someone wanted to be turned on versus when their body couldn't, or like frustrations
Mm.
with that, especially with like all being young women and vulva
Yeah.
owners, everything like
Yeah.
that. It was something that was very confusing to me and something that would get pinned and blamed on the person that wasn't feeling sexually responsive or could not have that experience in that moment for whatever reason. So just the pure validation that I experienced, knowing that
Yeah.
a trauma history surrounding like relationship and
Mm.
sexual trauma was not in my history.
Sure.
So knowing how deeply affected I was by that and knowing that terminology and knowing that my depth of experience was incredibly shallow here, it's something that I wanted to scream from the rooftops. Like, and Dr. Emily Nagoski, like her
Yeah.
TED Talk, like when I was in
Yeah.
college, I worked for a peer educator organization.
Mm-hmm.
It's called PAVE. It's at
Mm-hmm.
University of Dayton. It's lovely.
Mm-hmm.
It's peers advocating for violence education. And we did like consent cultures, we did
Mm.
domestic violence, like just trainings for students, for student athletes, for
Mm-hmm.
teachers, basically
Cool.
anything with what relationship violence would look like, and sex education on college campuses,
Mm-hmm.
which was really amazing.
Yeah.
So I found out about like come as you are and everything from that, but I didn't know that it was a term, arousal
Oh,
non-concordance,
yeah.
until my junior year of college.
Dang.
And I was like, this is crazy. Like, this is such a powerful term. And I told
Yeah.
everyone in my life about it, and they were like, oh, that makes perfect sense. That
Yeah, relief.
sometimes, even if everything is lined up perfectly, or if things are going wrong, like it just the reality that your body can respond in a way you don't expect it to, and that it's
Mm-hmm.
not anyone's fault,
Yeah,
is something so
absolutely.
powerful that should absolutely be normalized to me.
Yes, yes. So very needed. So very needed. Yeah, it can respond more or less than what you've wanted or desired in that moment. And just wait till you get my newsletter on lube. That's one
Oh,
definitely. It's coming for you. It's coming.
ooh, there we go. Okay, I can't
it's
wait. I'm excited
it's
to read
all
it.
about that, right? Of like forgetting the at least for the thought that like we should be wet all the time, like and
Right,
there are
right.
moments where you're not, and this is a whole other podcast that we could go into, which is habituation in long-term
Mm,
relationships, right? And where it gets
right.
much harder to get wet in long-term relationships because of
Yeah.
habituation. And to clarify, not a lack of love. Often we have
No, not at all.
significant love in those relationships, but because of habituating to a stimulus, there is lack of
Yeah.
response in the body, right? And so that can be so frustrating. And you're saying of like, I have this desire to have sex, I want to connect to my partner, and
Mm,
why is my body not wet, right? Which to I say that happens. Habituation. Throw lots of lube on there. Let's have fun,
right.
right? You know, and like
Right.
forgetting all of the stigma and the whatever, blah, 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 blah about lube, right? And so,
Right.
long life ahead of career here and pleasure activism.
Oh, I'm just so excited to
Ah,
keep things going,
yes.
and I have loved learning from you and learning
Oh,
from
thank
your work.
you.
It's been such an incredible thing.
Such a
I've
joy.
recommended your podcast to clients. I like truly,
Oh,
you're just such an incredible resource, and especially being in this field and like being such a fan of
mm,
this world for so long. And
yeah.
there's something so gratifying to me about like starting my program a couple years ago. I would be over the moon to be working where I am now and like
Yeah.
speaking with you and
Yeah.
everything. Um, yeah, so just thank you again.
Congratulations.
I could not.
Congratulations. You
But
made it.
yeah, so I'm just very, very excited to keep things
Oh,
going, and yeah, I cannot
yeah.
thank people like you more
Mm,
for that because you laid the groundwork. You've done the whole damn thing. Like you're still doing
mm.
it.
Ah. Thank you so much for that. Thank you so
Yes.
much for that. It's been such a joy to lay this groundwork. There's been times of tears and scared as I went through the programs that I went through, which I'm sure you
Oh
can
my God, yeah.
understand are not always
Yeah.
supportive. And so it feels really good to be on the other side with the doctorate as a bit of protection to keep going into more like radical
Yes.
and radical and radical areas and be like, hey guys, I graduated top of my class. Try and come after me. I got a 4.0. What can you say? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
please.
I love that I did that for myself and that I've been able to then share that with you and then that you trust me to come onto the show and have vulnerable conversations like this or sharing it with your clients because this is work that we do together, right? And so I couldn't
Yes,
do
yes.
any of this work without people like you who trust me, people like you who are sending this to your clients, listeners like you who are tuning in and sending this to your community. Like it is a community effort that we're doing here. And
100%.
yeah, I hope that the day that I die, that there's been a serious dent made in on rape culture and a serious shift in how we look at our relationships. And I will die happy with that. And so I'm grateful every day that I get to continue to work towards that life dream here with people like you.
Yes. Oh, yay. Thank you.
Yeah, of course, of course. Well, Jane, I'm sure everyone is dying to know where can they find you, where can they connect with you, plug away all of your resources and how people can find you to work with you.
Yeah, so I think, yeah, Psychology Today is a great place to find me. That's just Jane Downey. I do have a LinkedIn, so that's Jane Downey as well. And yeah, I am a LPC based in person and online. I'm licensed in the state of Ohio, and I am located at Integrated Hearts Therapy Center in Mason, Ohio, which is just outside of Cincinnati.
Beautiful. Awesome. Well, I'll have all of that linked in the show notes below so people can find your content. And again, thank
Oh,
you, Jane,
beautiful.
for coming onto the show
Oh,
today.
and we have an Instagram. It's at
Oh, yeah.
Integrated Hearts Therapy Center. So very easy. We do have an Instagram, and I do all the social media, or a lot of, like, majority of the social media marketing. So
Cool.
yeah.
Awesome. I'll have all of that linked in the show notes below so that listeners can go straight into there and find all of your content. So again, thank you, Jane. Thank you for coming onto the podcast today.
Yes, thank you so much. It was so lovely.
Yeah. Dear listener, thank you so much for tuning in to Modern Anarchy. Thank you for sharing this episode with your friends, with your lovers, with your community. Truly, it means so much to me, and I am so grateful that you are here. If you are wanting to release jealousy in your non-monogamous dynamics and step into compersion and pleasure-filled connection, you can read my book, The Psychedelic Jealousy Guide, for free on my website. There you will also find so many other free resources, including worksheets on how to clearly communicate and set commitments and boundaries within your non-monogamous dynamics, and other ways to practice clear communication about your sexual desires so that you can step into your most pleasure-filled sex and relationships. So head on over to modernanarchypodcast.com to find all of those free resources. And I look forward to seeing you next week.